through the Bible in a year. That's what we're doing. If you haven't seen in insert, there are 5 questions just to get some discussion started, and we'll be meeting on this Tuesday evening at 7 o'clock downstairs, talking about genealogy, among other things. You know, if you've started reading through the Bible this week, you've encountered some genealogies, not just this one from Matthew, but some from in Genesis as well. And if you're like me, sometimes we have a tendency to gloss over these genealogies very quickly. And I'll have to admit to you, I've never preached through these particular 17 verses in the past 25 or 30 years, you know. I just haven't. The names are difficult to pronounce. You don't believe it, just ask Bob Whitney. I thought he did a wonderful job, you know, but just ask Bob. Those names are difficult to pronounce, so we're not familiar with them. And because we're not familiar with the names, unless you're a biblical scholar, it's difficult sometimes to even keep the lineages straight. And so among the genealogies, others that we've encountered over in Genesis was Adam's descendants to Noah and his sons, and Noah and his sons' descendants to Abraham, and then there's some genealogy stuck in there, and there's just a bunch of them. But the genealogy from this morning traces Jesus' lineage from Abraham to David to Joseph, the husband of Mary, the mother of Jesus, who is called the Christ, or the Messiah. And there are at least a couple of reasons, there's more, but at least a couple of reasons for these lists of descendants. And one of those reasons isn't to confuse you with a lot of difficult names or who begat who. That's not one of the reasons. One reason for these lineages is to reveal that God, from the beginning, has had a plan for humanity. From the very beginning of time, God has had a plan for us. Our gospel genealogy is arranged in 3 sections, and they're based on the 3 great stages of Jewish history. The first section takes the history down to David. And if you remember from Sunday school or Bible school, David was the one who formed Israel into a nation and made the Jews a power in the world. The second section takes us down to exile in Babylon. And in this section we learn the nation's shame and tragedy and disaster. And the third section takes the story down to Jesus, who liberated humanity from their slavery, who rescued us from disaster, and in whom the tragedy turned into triumph for us. Now, William Barclay, and some of you may have Barclay's commentaries, reading through the Bible stuff in your own libraries, but William Barclay, in his commentary on Matthew's Gospel, says that these 3 sections of this genealogy stand for the 3 stages in the spiritual history of mankind. And he names those 3 stages, and he says the first stage is humanity was born for greatness. We learned in our Genesis reading from this week that God created us in His own image, in the image of God. He created us. First chapter of Genesis, verse 7. And God's dream, God's plan for us was a dream of greatness. We were designed for fellowship with God. Remember, before the fall, God would walk with Adam in the garden in the cool of the evening. And they would have fellowship and communion with one another. And we were created so that we could be nothing less than kin to God. The second stage that Barclay names is this: humanity lost its greatness. Instead of being the servant of God, we became the slave of sin. Whatever else might be said of us, you and I are not what we were meant to be. We aren't. We're a little less than the image God created us in. We are not meant. We are not what we were meant to be. We used our free will to defy and disobey God, rather than enter into fellowship with Him. We frustrated the design and the plan of God in creation. Remember, the serpent said to Eve, and even to us today, surely God didn't mean. You fill in the blank. Surely God didn't mean. And the third stage that Barclay lists is humanity can regain its greatness. Even in our fall, God didn't abandon us to ourselves and our own devices. He didn't allow us to be destroyed by our own folly. Into the world, God sent His Son, Jesus Christ, that He might rescue us from the trash heap of sin. Through Jesus, the chains of sin are broken, so that you and I might regain the fellowship with God that we'd lost. You see, God had a master plan that culminated in Jesus, the Christ, the Messiah. We all have plans too, don't we? I bet you there's not one of us here who doesn't have a plan. And as I share with you Donna and my plans that we made in our 30s, and I see some young adults here that fall in that age range, I want you to think about some plans that you have made or maybe are even making at this moment. Here's Dawn and I's plans for our 30s when our kids were little. I was going to continue to work for Consol, sock away money in their investment plan. You know, at that time they were matching 7.5% of everything I put in. And it was all going into stocks. And the price per share would increase to a point where the stocks would split. And suddenly I had twice as many stocks at half the price. That's all right. The price of the stocks would rise again. And they'd split it again. And that happened over and over. And so eventually, you know, those prices per share would rise again, split again. And we were going to retire. This is our 30s plans, okay? We were going to retire when I reached the age of 55. We were going to, believe it or not, move to the mountains, buy us a cabin-style home, and a motor home, and travel. Weren't we not? Yeah. And we were going to buy a motor home, and we were going to travel. Well, we're both 69. We own no home. The investment plan is gone to pay off debt so we could enter ministry with no financial obligations. Can't owe a lot on a preacher's salary. Basically just starting out all over again. Instead of living in the eastern mountains of West Virginia, we live in the upper Ohio Valley. So much for our plans from the 30s. We all have our plan. But what is God's plan for you and I? I would suggest that God's plan for us is not about where we'll live, where we'll work, or who we will marry, or any such thing. God's plan is to welcome, God's plan for us is for us to welcome fully the most precious gift that we have, our human lives. Nothing is more valuable. We cherish life by living fully, that is, by developing our human capabilities, so we can not gain wealth, but so that we can incarnate the gospel message of justice and peace in the best possible way. We follow God's plan by struggling to make available the resources that each person needs for the fullness of life. Housing, food, clothing, health care, education. Enough of what is needed so that we can live without anxiety. You know, John Wesley advocated earning as much as you can. Not so that you could keep up with the Joneses, but so you could keep what you needed and give the rest away to help others achieve their needs. And we must be very careful here. Because if we aren't, we can allow our wants to become our needs. If we're not careful, we can allow our wants to become our needs. We need to learn to be happy when our needs are met, and not disappointed with what we don't have. We follow God's plan so we can live God's plan. To recognize our and others' human value and joyfully embrace being a child of God. God continues, even to this day, to have a master plan. And it involves you and I using our capabilities to make the kingdom of God visible and available in our appointed places. The good news is that God didn't abandon us to ourselves. I don't know whether you realize it or not. But if it wasn't for Jesus, we'd be our own worst enemies. God didn't abandon us to ourselves, but has continually offered salvation throughout the ages. Thanks be to God and His Son, Jesus Christ. Thank you, Bob Wood, for getting through the genealogy for us.